Good afternoon, everyone. For one, I'd like to thank you all for coming. And before we get into it, maybe let's have Andrew Muli with our opening prayer.
Let's pray. Thank you, God, for the opportunity you've given us to be here and start this webinar. May we learn and have impactful discussions that can better our world and the situation that we're in. God, in Jesus' name I pray and believe. Amen.
Amen. Maybe to start. So, the Kabarak University Press Faith and Environment Project, as a background, is based on the recognition of the critical role that religion and faith play in governance and policy making in the global south generally and Africa in particular. Now, for the last 2 years, we have been organizing webinars, symposiums, and debates, and we have collaborated with UNEP Faith for Earth. So today's webinar is themed African Philosophy and Youth-Led Environmental Change, and it aims to deepen the understanding of the interconnection between African philosophy and youth-led environmental change. When we think of African philosophy, well, it's all about the rich and diverse fields that encompass the thoughts, the beliefs, and practices of the African continent. And well, youth-led environmental change for us is a powerful movement, one that embodies the principles of African philosophy. Now, before we get into all that, we would like to, well, she was supposed to be present, but she's unavailable for today. However, she sent a 5-minute video I would like to play. Her name is Asmaira Alibai, and she happens to be the UNEP Yes, she happens to be the UNEP Faith Coordinator, and she is also an advocate in the High Court of Kenya. And yes, she has an LLB from Strathmore University. Yes, so I'll just.
My name is Asmaira Alibai. I'm the Faith and Ecosystems Coordinator at UNEP. Good afternoon. My name is Asmaira Alibai. I'm the Faith and Ecosystems Coordinator at UNEP's Faith for Earth Coalition. I am sharing my screen. I hope that you can see it. The Faith for Earth Coalition is the highest level program dedicated to faith and interfaith voices for the Sustainable Development Goals. In particular, we focus on 3 main thematic areas: that's climate change, nature and biodiversity loss, and pollution and waste. A key mechanism that makes up the coalition is the Youth Council. And we're very privileged to have Dr. Iyad share some remarks about the importance of the Youth Council.
Faith for Earth Youth Council, as part of the structure of the Faith for Earth Coalition of UNEP, brings a unique perspective to the table. Their ability to infuse discussions with timeless moral principles and ethical considerations derived from their belief systems enriches the discourse on sustainability. In supporting the institutionalization of the Faith for Earth Youth Council's work with the youth major groups of UNEP, this coalition not only recognizes the vitality of young voices, but also acknowledges the transformative potential of faith in shaping human behavior. What makes this collaboration even more compelling is the emphasis on intergenerational dialogue. By fostering conversations that transcend age barriers, the Faith for Earth Coalition lays the foundation for a sustainable future that respects the wisdom of the elders while embracing the innovation of the future. The Youth Council's strategic actions convening young faith leaders at the global level, driving engagement at the policy level, promoting peer-to-peer exchanging, and advocating for positive environmental change, institutionalizing the faith youth engagement under the faith thematic working group, form a formidable framework. The institutionalization of faith youth engagement within the UNEP framework signifies a structural commitment, ensuring the enduring influence of faith actors in policy shaping spaces like UNEA. Finally, the alignment with UNEP campaigns, programs, activities, and resources demonstrates a practical integration of faith values into tangible initiatives. Crucially, the Faith for Earth Coalition not only supports the Youth Council's initiatives, but also is actively engaged in institutionalizing its own work within UNEP's different divisions and offices. This integration, working with faith actors as the implementation strategy for UNEP's midterm strategy, the coalition ensures that the moral responsibilities, ethical values, and transformative potential of faith are woven into the very fabric of UNEP's operation.
So we have the Faith for Earth Youth Council's action plan. It drives engagement of the council. It places diversity, inclusivity, and intergenerational dialogue at the center of its engagement. We've been able to convene young people from around the world on issues of land restoration, desertification, and drought resilience. This was on World Environment Day. And more recently around green jobs and youth skills, and this was on World Youth Skills Day. For many within the network, this is the first time that they're hearing that young people of faith are organizing initiatives and programs like this. So the one thing we're demonstrating here is that the Youth Council as a convening platform promotes peer-to-peer exchange. It also promotes intergenerational dialogue, enabling other members within the network to hone in on youth, faith, environment specific projects and initiatives. We recognize that youth are catalysts for public support, for advocacy, raising ambition, political will, enhancing access to environmental information and public awareness, and so much more. But there still needs to be sufficient institutional support in order to allow young people engaged in this space to scale their solutions. More localized discussions need to happen that take into account challenges, whether thematic focused or geography based, that promotes this inclusive and this diverse perspective that we're looking for when it comes to intergovernmental negotiations. So we need to see, local level discussions being presented at the global level, but also for these global level discussions or regional ones to trickle down at the national and the local level. We therefore encourage efforts like this one under the Faith and Environment Project to convene discussions, focus on regional challenges, focus on regional opportunities, and bring these to international meetings, leveraging platforms like the Faith for Earth Youth Council. And we're very happy that the Kabrak University team are part of the Faith for Earth Youth Network, and hope that there's an opportunity for them to engage under the as a member of the Youth Council in the years to come. And with that, all the best with this discussion. I do apologize that I'm not able to be there in person due to conflicting commitments.
Well, that sets the stage for our discussion today. And onto our first discussant. His name is Mr. Themba Mlangwa. He's informed us that he's currently graduated as an LLB student at the University of South Africa. He also has a publication that's titled Understanding Africa's Challenges what really is going on, and we would like to know Mr. Themba's insights on African philosophy, its criticisms, contributions, and its overall usage in solving environmental challenges. Welcome, Mr. Themba.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. It is an honor to be here today to discuss the significant role of African philosophy in environmental protection and how it shapes our understanding of sustainability and conservation. As we navigate the modern world, it is crucial to remember the rich heritage and wisdom embedded in African philosophy, which offers a unique insight into our relationship with the environment. So yes, we are on the right slide. Thank you. Understanding African philosophy. What is African philosophy? What does the term philosophy mean? And what makes African philosophy African? African philosophy is deeply rooted in the interconnectedness of all living things. It emphasizes a holistic approach of life where human beings are an integral part of the natural world, not separate from it. This worldview encourages a sense of responsibility, stewardship towards the environment, which is critical in addressing the ecological challenges we face today. The term philosophy is derived from the Greek word philosophia, meaning the love of wisdom, literally. However, this does not mean philosophy originated in Greece. Chinese philosophy and ancient Egyptian philosophy, for example, are much older. This underlines that philosophy in its essence is a global and timeless pursuit of wisdom. To be genuine lovers of wisdom, we must question every existence, every experience and knowledge claim critically to ensure our actions are based on reliable and tested knowledge. So in Africa, we have the principle of Ubuntu. This principle of Ubuntu translates to I am because we are in different languages. In South Africa, in Zulu, it translates to Umuntu ngumuntu ngabantu. It is a Central African philosophy. This concept fosters a sense of solidarity and mutual support together for a common good. In the context of environmental protection, Ubuntu promotes sustainable practices that benefits both people and the planet. It teaches us our well-being is intrinsically linked to the health of our environment, and that we must care for it as we care for each other. Can you go to the next slide, please? Yes. So there has been criticisms and misunderstandings of the concept of African philosophy. One question that would arise from many scholars would be, does African philosophy even exist? Well, despite its strength, African philosophy has faced several criticisms over the years. Some argue that it is too idealistic, It is not practical in the modern world and the fourth industrial revolution. Others believe that it lacks scientific rigor needed to address complex issues like environmental issues. While these criticisms have some merit, they often overlook the practical applications and wisdom embedded in African traditional thought. African philosophy does offer a unique perspective and solutions that are valuable in today's rapidly changing world. According to Kwasi Weridu, an African philosopher, African philosophy must be distinguished from African traditional worldviews. It is a field that is still evolving. In post-colonial formal academic discipline, however, this does not imply that there was a lack of philosophical thinking in pre-colonial Africa. It is emphasized actually by other scholars that African philosophy must focus on Africa's historical realities and challenges so that it can contribute meaningfully to resolving practical problems. Contributing, okay, can you go to this next slide, please? Thank you. Contributing to environmental protection. How does African philosophy contribute to environmental protection? One of the key contributions of African philosophy to environmental protection is the emphasis on community and collective action. In many African societies, decisions are ought to be about natural resources management are made collectively, ensuring that these needs of all community members are considered. This contrasts sharply with the individualistic approaches often seen in Western environmentalism, where personal responsibility is emphasized over collective action. The African approach promotes a sense of shared responsibility and mutual support, for which is essential for sustainable development. African philosophy also teaches us the importance of respecting and learning from indigenous knowledge systems. For centuries, African communities have developed sophisticated ways of managing the environment, from traditional farming techniques to water conservation methods. By integrating these practices with modern science in the fourth industrial revolution, we can create more effective, sustainable solutions to environmental challenges. This fusion is of old and new knowledge. It can help us address some of the pressing environmental issues of our time, like global warming. Challenges faced by African youth. Can you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. Challenges faced by African youth. Well, there are significant challenges faced by African youth in implementing traditional philosophical approaches to environmental protection in a rapidly modernizing world, in particular in the fourth industrial revolution. The pressure to conform to Western ideas of development often leads to the marginalization of indigenous knowledge, ideas, and practices. Additionally, limited access to resource and education can hinder the ability of young people to fully engage in environmental protection efforts. This creates a gap between traditional wisdom, modern practices, and it also makes it difficult to implement sustainable solutions. Can you please go to the next slide, please? Thank you. Before I conclude, I would like to give a few examples from the SADC region and in particular South Africa. In the Southern African Development Community, SADC region, and particularly in South Africa, there are numerous examples of how these challenges are being addressed through the integration of traditional knowledge and modern environmental practices. There is a program called CBNRM, Community-Based Natural Resources Management. In Namibia and Botswana, this program has successfully involved local communities in wildlife conservation and sustainable resource management. These programs are based on traditional practices of communal decision-making and resource sharing, which align with principles of Ubuntu. In conclusion, to conclude, African philosophy offers a valuable insight and approach to environmental protection that is rooted in its community, respect for nature, collective responsibility. By embracing principles of African philosophy and addressing challenges faced by African youth, I think we can create a more sustainable and equitable future for all. Thank you for your time, your attention. I look forward to the discussion today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Themba. Thank you for the quote. I am because we are, and I believe that it grounds Africa's philosophy in its truest form. Now, onto our second discussant. Her name is Ms. Faith Nangila. She is the communication lead, Green Generation Initiative, and an environmental planner and manager. So Ms. Faith Nangila will be sharing with us challenges faced by African youth when implementing traditional philosophical approaches to environmental protection in a modernizing world. Welcome, Ms. Nangila.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. Yes, as you've heard, my name is Nangila Wafula. Kindly bear with me for any background noises. I am in a public space. Can you hear me audibly?
Yes, we can.
So, I am an environmental planner and manager by profession. I work with Green Generation Initiative. And I would like to discuss, the challenges that are in environmental conservation, especially when young people are supposed to implement the African philosophy. As the previous presenter has shared, African philosophy is all about the Ubuntu. I am because we are, and communism and how we live together with nature as one. Because when you look at our history, people were taught to live together with nature and not to be apart from nature. But we have grown up and become part of a modernized world through the colonial system and also the globalization of the world. And we have reached a point where we think human beings are apart from nature. And that's why we are having issues of exploitation and mismanagement of natural resources. Now, in the context of young people, one of the challenges I would say is the basic challenge. The fact that most young people are not even aware of the African philosophy or what they're supposed to do as Africans. They are not even aware of their rich history. And therefore, even implementing the African philosophy in the aspects of conservation would be very hard for them because they wouldn't understand what it means for them to actually implement the African philosophy. Now, another challenge in this space that I have seen is you wouldn't even hold the young people accountable for that because you realize that the sharing of information and indigenous knowledge, has been limited by the fact that most of us have moved from rural areas, and even the current generation of people who have the indigenous knowledge have not been able to pass that knowledge to the next generation. So we are having a big intergenerational gap where young people don't even have the traditional indigenous knowledge, and the ones who are supposed to pass the knowledge to them are not even making an effort of it. But you could say partly because indigenous knowledge is not really well celebrated like scientific knowledge, but you cannot have the two apart because they are intertwined. In fact, you'll realize that most of the African knowledge for environmental conservation is used to inform some of the scientific discoveries that they are making. It's not that they're making new things. It's not that they're discovering a new system of things. It's the things that have been done by communities from a long time ago, but they have just been given a scientific term. I'll give an example of nature-based solutions, which are the solutions that you use nature to solve challenges that face nature, while also ensuring that there is benefit for people in the society. Now, for communities, such as a community where I come from, there's a national park. It's the smallest national park in Kenya. It's called Saiwa National Park. It's in Saiwa wetland. That wetland has been conserved by the community, not because they are environmentalists who went to study how to conserve the environment, and also not because there was an external entity who came in and told them it's important for them to conserve that wetland, but they conserve it because that wetland is a home for the cranes. And the cranes are a very significant bird species that holds a very high position among the traditional indigenous knowledge of the Luya community. So because of the presence of the cranes, and they understand the value of the cranes to the community and also to the ecosystem, conserving that wetland, and also the presence of the Sitatunga antelopes that hold also a big environmentalist. But this information was information I got from a scientific article of someone who did a research about the community and what they are doing, just to put a term to it. They're already doing nature-based solutions, but they didn't know they're doing nature-based solutions. But the term was there, the work was there already. The term was just not put there for them to understand. So I'm sorry because I seem to have deviated from the question, which is to highlight the challenges. And I think the challenges is inadequate funding and infrastructure hinders a lot of youth-led initiatives. You will find that young people who are interested in learning about indigenous knowledge also need money to be able to grasp this information and bring it to the table or bring it to the decision-making table and influence policy. For example, we were trying to run a project where we visited different communities. We met with the older generations and have them speak to us about their indigenous knowledge so that we can see how we can preserve this knowledge and also use this knowledge to inform some of the scientific discoveries that have been made and to also inform decision-making. But you find that this is resource intensive. You need finances to travel from one community to another. You need human resource. And right now, for a young person to get any funding, it's very difficult because most funding organizations think young people are financial risks, that it is easy for young people to give up on projects. It's not easy to monitor young people, or young people will squander and embezzle the funds that have been given to them. So finances becomes a very, very limiting factor when it comes to incorporating African philosophy in environmental conservation for young people. Also, the contributions of African youth and their knowledge systems are often undervalued. You see, you go to these big conferences and you always meet. I will make this clear. In Africa, there are no indigenous communities. We are all indigenous communities. But you see, the concept of indigenous communities and local communities is something that was brought forth by the UN. But I am a Luya. ecosystem, our ancestors were all indigenous communities. But right now in Kenya, you will find that they're only ranking almost, I think, only eight communities are considered to be indigenous. The rest of us are considered to be local communities. Now you go to conferences, and I'm wondering to myself, as a lawyer, I have been born in Africa. My ancestors are from Africa, so why am I being considered a local community in the same group as an Indian? Which doesn't really make sense, because Indian migrants came to Africa during the trade period. So we cannot all be local communities. We are all indigenous communities, and the ones that migrated as a result of trade or colonialism, they're the ones that should be considered to be local communities. But now, as a young person, when you go to these conferences and you bring out this knowledge that maybe you have learned from your grandmother, and you feel that it can be used to inform a decision or a policy, you find that the information is undervalued. It's undervalued on basis that you're young. It's undervalued on the basis that it cannot be verified. Just because it's indigenous knowledge and cannot be verified scientifically, it is thereby considered to be inaccurate, or it cannot be used to inform any decision. So we need to have more policies in place to support and empower young people, more policies in place to protect our indigenous communities, because our cultural heritage is what makes us Africans. Our cultural heritage is what sets us apart from other people. There is no way you will find solutions to the current environmental challenges in Africa minus the community cultural knowledge, because people have been living with nature as one, nature and people as one. There was no concept of people being above nature. Before this whole globalization and modernization came forth, we were all living together with nature as one. But now we are having a problem where we have adopted so much of the modernization, and we feel that the solutions to every environmental problem that is faced in Africa should come externally. But you see, if the solutions are coming externally and they're not coming from our own cultural heritage, we have conflicts with communities. Right now, we are speaking about just transitioning from non-renewable energy to renewable energy. That is a good idea, but it is not an idea that came forth from Africa. And every time any idea comes forth externally, it does not consider the African communities. How just is just transition for Africa? Is it just because it's just for other countries and continents? Or is it just because it's just for all of us? Because right now you cannot speak of just transition and you're leaving the people behind. You cannot have communities being evicted from their ancestral land. And you know, as Africans, we place big value on our ancestral land to create space for carbon markets. That is not just transition. You are leaving people behind. You are displacing communities that ought to be in their ancestral land, who have been taking care and preserving those natural ecosystems. But now you want to evict them because you want to do carbon credits in the name of climate change mitigation. Yet people are just looking for quick money. I believe that nature-based solutions might be long-term. They are very long-term, and they are very nature-friendly, and they're also community-friendly. You cannot implement any nature-based solution if you do not consult the community. So when you have the community on board, you get people absorbing and taking up the initiatives and the projects having more impact than if you had the communities excluded from the decision-making. We are having so many issues in Africa right now, and every initiative or every strategy that has been put forth to adapt and mitigate climate change is not even putting into factor our grassroots communities, our grandmothers. What are the implications of these strategies to them and their community beliefs and their traditional beliefs? So I believe that those are the main challenges that we are facing as African youth when we try to implement the African philosophy in environmental conservation. And while I am not excluding scientific information. Scientific information is very important. I am a data scientist. What I am trying to say is that we need to find a way to incorporate the two of them, because you cannot entirely exclude indigenous information on basis that it cannot be verified when you have seen its working and its systems in place that have conserved the environment. But you can also not entirely exclude scientific data, because we have seen that scientific data has helped us to inform policies, to understand where we are coming from, and what the future might look like. But I believe that long-term solutions can only come if we find a way to integrate the two without killing the African philosophy. Thank you. I hope I've answered your question.
Thank you, Ms. Nangila. For one, thank you for highlighting the challenges, as you have succinctly mentioned. Thank you for also showing the interconnection between indigenous and scientific knowledge, as well as the distinction between local and indigenous communities. Now, to our third speaker, his name is Mr. John Linus. He's the founder, Greenwald Youth, and also the chairperson, UNESCO Youth Forum. He holds a Bachelor of Technology from Moy University, and he will be answering the question, how do African philosophies evolve over the years? How its effects impacted environment discussions at the local, regional, and global levels. Welcome, Mr. Linus.
Yeah, thanks a lot to everyone who has joined the room. This is a safe space for learning, a safe space for idea exchange and making sure that we move from one place to another in line with getting to know and be well acquainted with the knowledge and the trends in technology. So let me first thank the previous speakers because they've highlighted detailed information about the discussion, and not to add so much, but to just emphasize on what they have just said. The basic thing that you need to do is just to seek the factual indigenous knowledge and exemplifying the value change inherent to African culture to promote the changing climatic conditions. So they have explained themselves in detail, and what now is our role, learning from this past experience that have been there before. How can we change from this experience and make sure that we make these ideas that we learn from the ancient people into today's world that is changing? So to start, what is our responsibility as young people now? Because that now that we've gained that, we've understand that there have been practices that have been, communities have been coming together, the Ubuntu and all these things that they have highlighted. What I can say is that knowledge exchange from one another, just from youth to youth, just from Nangila has explained that he has a number of knowledge that he has learned from our community, and myself, maybe I know little knowledge from other community, my community. Then we exchange these ideas, we come on board in platforms like this and trying to discuss these ideas and how we can incorporate the new technologies in it. At the same time, we can equally make this. Hello.
We can hear you.
Yeah. You can hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay, fine, thank you. So how best can we tap the knowledge that we have as young people? Because I'm sure the most people in this call are, majority of the people in the call are the youth. What are the opportunities that are there for us to make sure that our ideas and our actions be meaningful to the society and the world at large? So the most important thing is, are we able to share the information that we have? And what kind of information are we having? Like, there have been a number of platforms that people attend, just like the same way Nangila said. There have been a number of conferences from UN, from different organizations, the Africa Climate Summit, and so many of these platforms. Are we able to bring these ideas on board so that they can be implemented? That is the big question that we need to ask ourselves. And also, as young people, are we accountable with the little resources or any resource that we might find from even a friend or fellow Africans, or even donation from donors, or even, let's say, even funding? Are we able to account for them? And are we able to support our fellow Africans to live as a community, to live as a Ubuntu? So those are the few questions that we need to ask ourselves. And also, are we ready to integrate these things? There are a number of things that are not even, let's say in AI, there are a lot of information that have not been fed into AI. Are you able to take this knowledge that you've learned, insert them in AI, so that at the end of the day, you get some income out of it, and also make sure that you share the knowledge and making sure that there's a continuity on our culture and all these things. So having been interacting with a number of people. I've seen a number of people working globally at local level, at regional level, trying to coming up with a number of policies, like for instance, the African Union incorporating African philosophy into their environmental frameworks, promoting sustainable development goals and climate resilience in different countries. Just like they come together, they discuss these things, and how best can we hold them accountable as young people? That is the big question also. And also to say in global level, we've seen a number of discussions. That's the same way I've said leaders and intellectuals from Africa use international platforms to share a lot of knowledges just like that. And also from local grounds, you find that a number of young people, just from a given example is Nangila was just spoken. She shared that she has been working with the Green Climate Initiative and also engaging the local community from their community. That is a very, very good example, because it's telling us what she does at the grassroots level. So at least we influence other people and influencing a number of youths also to take part in these learning processes. And also just like the Green Belt movement, also my organization, Green World Youth, Climate, their Kiswahili Climate Hub. I saw it is a new organization in Kenya. I've seen them championing for the local vegetables, you know, there are benefits of using local vegetables, planting them, just like incorporating them even in farming practices, whereby we do intercropping, we do the legumes between the maize, you know. These methods are also helping in conserving environment, and not only conserving environment, but also ensuring that the well-being of the people are in place. So in understanding the evolution of African philosophy and their impact to environmental discussion are always crucial. And I can say that the most important thing is we educate people, we incorporate the different perspective that we learn from different platforms, and making sure that we make sound discussion and sound decisions in different platforms that we are given. So I want to stop there, maybe to learn from one another. And the most important thing that I would like to advise us is that we share our value with different people. It is your value that makes people maybe get in touch with you, learn from you, and also make sure that you are available in these social media platforms that we have right now. Because without making yourself available, visible, I mean, nobody can know that maybe you have a given interest in a given area, or you have passion in a given area that you might be interested in learning more and supporting even your initiative in gaining a lot of knowledge from it. So it is good to always share your value. Let's use the available tools that are there. Like for instance, the AI at UNESCO also, we have a digital library. You can access them and try to get the knowledge from digital library, and also learn to just approach the old people in the community. Just get to have a sit down with them if there are some in your village or in the place where you are. Just get to learn. They know the way, but being that maybe you are a young person, you might have the energy, and we believe we have the energy, not that you have the energy to push the conversation going. So tap the wisdom, try to amplify the wisdom that you've tapped, even sharing it online, so that at least maybe I didn't have that information, I can get it online. So I don't want to bore or to talk a lot. A number of issues have been addressed by the previous speakers, and I want to appreciate them because they've highlighted everything that I wanted to say. So I'm just here to also learn from a number of participants who have joined, and also ready to share my ideas, share opportunities that are available, and see how best we grow together as a team. It is through idea sharing and knowledge sharing is where we can learn and make our successful moves in everything that we do. So I'm ready to learn, ready to be with you every time, and ready to make sure that our voices are heard and making sure that every idea counts. So with those few remarks, let me listen also and get from other persons also to continue learning in the session. Thank you, and back to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Linus, for, well, your insights. Thank you for telling us, or advising us rather, to knowledge share as much as possible, to tap into the sources of knowledge. And well, yes, the open access to UNESCO's digital library. Now, our fourth speaker, unfortunately, is unavailable. His name is Mr. Ethan Thuo. He's a graduate of the University of Illinois and a Juris Doctor candidate at the George Washington School of Law. He sent his speech, and I guess I'll go ahead and read it. He says, I'll read word for word. Hello, everyone. I sincerely apologize for not being with you all today, as I had a scheduling conflict. I want to my sincerest apologies. I want first to thank the Faith and Environment Project led by Nabintu Wanchiko and the Kabarak University Press for inviting me to be a panelist for this webinar. In lieu of my absence, I have written a short response to the questions posed to me. For those who don't know me, my name is Ethan Thuo, and I'm a JD candidate at the George Washington University School of Law in Washington, D.C., in the United States, with a strong research interest in international environmental law and human rights. I have been in Kenya for the last 2 months learning about alternative justice systems, alternative dispute resolution, and the Kenyan criminal justice system under the tutelage of Court of Appeal Justice Joel Ngugi. While here, I have had the amazing opportunity to attend conferences all across the country, from Nairobi, Kisumu, Kajiado, and Nakuru, and meet most of the judiciary, including the Lady Chief Justice, CJ, and President of the Supreme Court of Kenya, Martha Koome. As much of my research interests around environmental law and justice, I think there to be no better place to study than Africa and the global South as a whole. Before I dive into answering the questions posed to me, I want first to discuss the importance and significance of the theme of today's webinar, African philosophy and youth-led environmental change. In the center of social justice movements worldwide, the youth are on the front lines. The same is the case for pushing forward environmental justice and change. The first step is to have a plan and a mechanism in place for which to implement it. Change is intentional and depends on calculated steps to ensure the outcome expected is the outcome achieved. About 2 weeks ago, I attended a judicial dialogue at Amboseli National Park with magistrates, judges, and conservancy organizations, all with the goal of protecting local habitats and improving sustainable development initiatives all across Kenya. The method with which we expected to affect change was through legal frameworks. What we found was that there was not a lack of laws regarding environmental protection, but instead the issue was the enforcement of those laws. According to the Physical and Land Use Planning Act number 13, 2019, all counties in Kenya are required to have a county spatial plan, CSP. The CSPs are drafted together with local communities to allocate land across the county for different community benefits such as wildlife, tending livestock, agriculture, and industrial development. The gap, however, is that there is little to no enforcement of these plans. What is even more concerning is that many community members are unaware that these plans exist and are in effect. As a result, people come to buy land with ideas of what to do with it, not knowing that the land they bought has restrictions on what can and cannot be built or developed on it. This is only one of the many examples of gaps in environmental law that must be filled. It is our duty to protect the environment in ways that don't disrupt existing sustainable development efforts and people native to the lands we discuss. I was asked to discuss a little bit about how African philosophies evolved over the years and how its effects impact environmental discussions at the local, regional, and global levels. There is a really interesting article written by 2 Nigerian authors named Dr. Joyce Onorom Henry Agofure and Aisha Umar M., titled African Philosophy, The Questions of Climate Change and the Environment. In this article, the author discusses the emphasis of African philosophy and how it relates to environmental impact. In other words, how African philosophy has changed over time to discuss environmental and ecological themes that align with our mission of environmental protection and change. African philosophical contents are rapidly changing to consider the political, social, and cultural changes in African society. These changes are reorienting the human relationship in ways that favor recognition of the intrinsic value of life and the right to equal flourishing of other biological entities and ecosystems, including wildlife. Specifically in Kenya, the philosophical changes are redefining, in my opinion, the importance of environmental protection in an age where industrial development is seemingly more desired for profit. Furthermore, indigenous communities must be brought forth in these conversations of environmental change. Environmental protection and sustainable development are not new ideas. They have been practiced by indigenous communities that have and continue to live alongside wildlife. Therefore, there is much to learn from them when it comes to these conversations. These points take care of the local and regional levels. On the global level, global South countries need to be had when it comes to environmental discussions. Too often do global North countries, especially the project for inviting me to be on this panel, and I hope to catch you all at the next one. Of course, if you have any questions, you can email me at ethanmwangi@gmail.com or text me. We shall share the numbers on the chat. I look forward to hearing from you. Yes, signed Ethan M. Thuo. Well, that's what he had to say, and I hope that I have relayed it in the best formal possible way. To the next session, we have a question that we're posing to all our panelists, and the question for them is the way forward, really. What steps do African youth take practically in environmental protection in light of African philosophy? We shall start with Ms. Nangila, followed by Mr. Themba, and finally Mr. Linus in that order. Thank you.
Pardon me for a minute, you broke on my end.
That's all right. I'll just repeat the question. The question is, what is the way forward for African youth? Yes, and how they can take practical steps in environmental protection in light of African philosophy.
Okay, key strategies for reconciliation. I believe that young people are full of potential. Okay, everybody keeps saying that, but it is true whether we believe it or not. We are full of potential. Actually, we ought to believe it. And most young people are very much educated. Now, if there is any generation that can actually bring back the African philosophy as it was originally, oh, sorry. So as I was saying, African youth are very educated, and right now we are in the generation of the most educated young people. So I also believe that the same generation that can bring back the African philosophy in the aspect of environmental conservation and even in governance right now is this current generation, because it's a generation that is inquisitive, a generation, it's a generation. Now, what is to correct the systems that are not. If you were to do a research and about indigenous knowledge, you wouldn't find us to be able to climate change and to also build up in every African out. To do is to find a way that we can valorize and incorporate that wisdom into modern development. Within us, young people, there are researchers, there are scientists, there are people who have done community mobilization, there are people who have done sociology, there are people who have done theology. All these social sciences, when incorporated together, they can help us to harness the power of indigenous knowledge for environmental conservation by creating a knowledge bank that can be accessed by every young person. We are the most tech savvy young people out here, and you cannot provide a solution to a problem that you do not understand. So let us educate ourselves. Let us be familiar with the African philosophy. Let us be familiar with our culture. Modernization is nice, but it doesn't make you look smarter. You being aware of your culture and practicing your culture doesn't make you any less smarter than any other person out there. In fact, I believe that the person who has no idea of their roots cannot advise anybody on the way forward, because the past is used to inform the future. So if you do not understand where you are coming from, it will be very hard for you to map where you are going in a way that you can be able to help your community and your society to grow and develop. So it's very important for us young people to be aware of the African philosophy, to understand how the African philosophy can be integrated for environmental conservation. And after we have been able to do all this, we need to find a way that we can keep and preserve this knowledge. Because right now, there was an article I was reading about one South African woman, and I think she was the last of her kind to know a specific language. I don't want to speak out of ignorance because I don't remember the details, but she was the last of her kind to know that knowledge. Now, when the colonial masters came, the first people that were killed were herbalists and the medicine men. And these people had the knowledge that helped us to preserve some of the trees, the indigenous trees that you see in our tropical rainforest, because we understood their medicinal value. Until we can revive this knowledge, until we can come to respect this knowledge as part of our culture, we young people are the only ones who can revive it, because we are open-minded. We have the ideas. You can use tech to preserve your culture. If we have an information bank where you have interviewed people from different cultures and you have that information and you put it in a bank that can be accessible online, it will make it easier for us to even be able to incorporate indigenous knowledge into contemporary science and inform policies and decisions. Also, young people the way forward is for us to also participate in governance and policy. I have been in so many conferences, and I know most of us go to those conferences to network, but I have been able to see our counterparts, the Asians and the people from the global north. They follow through the whole negotiation process. They participate through those discussion meetings late into the night. And when you enter those conferences, you will find very few African youth. And you will wonder why they're not there. I would say partially because maybe they have not been capacity built enough, so they are not aware of what is happening and therefore cannot participate fully in the process, or they just don't care. And I tend to believe the option of they just don't care is the common one, because if you were interested in something, you will seek knowledge, you will research, and you will want to know how it works. So let us be interested in following up on governance and policy. Right now, policies that are in place are not conducive for indigenous communities. The policies that are in place might kill the cultural information that we need for environmental conservation. So how can us as young people participate in the governance and policy and ensure that we have policies that do not just inform, but are actually implemented into actions on the ground to ensure that we protect our culture, and we also include our indigenous communities and the grassroots communities in the decision making. Education and awareness is very critical. Now, as young people, you have different information. You have learned different things. I am an environmental planner. I have been able to participate in big conferences and negotiations for climate decisions, but it is very useless of me to participate in these big conferences, to follow through these processes and not disseminate what I'm learning in these conferences to those young people who are in grassroots communities that do not have the opportunity to be in the same spaces. You can break down information in a way that it will make other people interested to learn about it. While you are dealing with different groups of people, you break down that information in a way that they can understand it. I speak Luya. There's a way I can read a paper and interpret it in Luya for my grandmother to understand it, so that she can be able to know what is happening and how she can bring her knowledge into ensuring that we make better policies and laws that can inform actionable items on the ground that do not suffocate our communities. Also, you need to keep track of the things that are happening around us. We cannot just be lax when it comes to looking for information. We cannot just sit back and relax and just let other people solve the issues. We are the only ones who can solve the problems of today. And I understand that sometimes it seems like a burden, where we have to find solutions to problems that we did not invent. And I know that can be frustrating, especially when the people who invented these problems become also obstacles in us implementing the solutions. But let us not tire, let us not give up, because these same people will not be there a few years ahead. And whatever will be left of our world, we are the ones who will face those repercussions. So I believe that we need to be very active in education and awareness, governance and policy, and also incorporation of the indigenous knowledge through innovation and creativity, because we are very innovative, we are tech savvy. If there is a way you can find a solution to a current problem, it is okay to use technology to solve a cultural problem. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nangila. We'll have Mr. Thamba. Please take 2 minutes. Thank you.
Well, Faith has said most of the part. I think she's reading my notes. Yes, it's very insightful. What Faith, what you have said, what she has said. I think to try and answer the question, I also think it is really important to help Africans or African youth in particular learn about and connect with their own philosophical heritage by including African philosophy in schools. Young people can better understand their cultural roots and see how these ideas can help with today's environmental challenges. Educational programs can teach about African philosophies like Ubuntu, which emphasizes community and togetherness. This knowledge helps young people apply these traditional ideas into modern problems. Additionally, involving youth in policy making and providing opportunities for them to participate in decision-making processes does ensure their voice, that their voices are heard and valued. When young people collaborate on making projects and share their ideas, it can lead to innovative solutions and effective environmental protection strategies. In short, learning about African philosophy, participating in policy making, and working together on projects can deepen young people's cultural understanding and inspire them to address these environmental issues creatively. This platform sets a great example for that, for creating that platform where young people can talk about African philosophy, where young people can learn about African philosophy, and whether if there is an impact, a role that African philosophy has in environmental change. Thank you very much. I hope my answer was understandable. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Thamba, for that. Mr. Linus?
Yes. Now let me make myself be seen. He said, be seen, be heard, and involve yourself is when people will see that you are engaged. So what I would like to urge us is that let's be ready to learn. Let's be ready to connect. Let's be ready to share our value. And also the thing that I would also like to share is that let's embrace innovative voluntarism if maybe there's need. And also the most important thing is that let's always pray and let's make things work for African youth, and also let's support one another in any way possible. And the most important thing also is that make yourself visible in these social media platforms so that we can know that you are available and ready to share with you and ready to learn from you. That's the thing that I can say right now.
Thank you so much, Mr. Linus. Thank you all for answering the question. It's been well answered. Now to our Q&A session, we are welcoming questions from the attendees. In case you have any question, you can type it in the chat or voice it. Yes, Aaron Baraka. Yes, Aaron. I'm being informed that
Hi,
hi, yes.
blessings. It's Tekin. I have a question for the panelists. You've been talking about African identity when it comes to environment conservations, and you've been making reference also to using technology in doing so. I have a problem with that, and especially because when you're talking about technology, most recently when you're talking about AI, we are having issues in terms of the Eurocentricity of these technologies. It is not our creation, and most of it are centralized and a reflection of the Western culture. So in the wake of all this, and also by the fact that most of the conservation efforts that we are having right now are funded by the West, you have people like Bill Gates, European EU sponsoring our climate action and environment conservation issues. How do you balance the effect of the funders, the identity of the technology that you use, and our need as Africans and African youth to promote African identity when preserving our environment? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tekin, for that. A second question from Karaoke, and maybe if you could kindly indicate the panelist you want to answer the question. Okay, then let's have a question from Victoria.
Thank you so much to the panelists. Thank you so much to the panelists for the information you've shared. It's really been insightful, and I've learned a lot. So I have a question concerning, okay, there was this issue that was pointed out on the decline in passing the information, the intergenerational gap, in the sense that most youths of today, we don't really know about the African philosophy, maybe not in the scientific way, but yeah, the traditional real African philosophy. And most of these problems I would say are linked to religion. When we had this discussion a while back, we came to the conclusion that most of the African philosophies and beliefs and all that is intertwined with religion, so that we conserve the environment mostly because, let me say, the God said, and yeah, things like that. But then with the coming of Christianity, it's no longer that, yeah, I'll say that serious, that much. Nobody really talks about preserving the environment in that sense. So I feel like the main issue, okay, maybe not the main issue, but one of the issues that leads to this generational gap is the, I'll call it change of religion, mostly of the Africans. So maybe if you would also speak a bit on that in relation to the religious part of it. Yeah, maybe Miss Nangila might want to say something on that, or any other panelists who would wish to. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Victoria, for that question. There's also a question in the chat. Jimmy Wambua is asking, well, first, thank you for this informative session. My question is towards Ms. Wafula and the panel generally. How do we go around the issue of having communities that are skeptical in sharing their traditional science and methods and incorporation of technology due to issues of overexploitation or credit being given to the wrong people? Yes, we have that. Any further questions? Okay, I guess we can have this first round. Yes, as we think up more questions. So we invite our panelists, Mr. Wafula, Mr. Linus, Mr. Themba, to pick any questions. Yes.
So allow me to go first. So I will address the first question that speaks about the balance. Okay, the fact that we are trying to keep our African identity, but at the same time we have the European funding our projects, and also most of the ideas and solutions seem to come from the Western side. And I totally agree with you. The dominance of Western perspectives in global environmental discourse has been a critical issue, especially when it comes to demeaning African knowledge system and practices. And when it comes to this issue, the problem, I think, at this point lies on our side, because we cannot always blame the West for the things that happen. In Africa, we have come to develop a dependency mentality, where we don't want to work for things and we just want to get used to aid. And I believe that is one of the things that are killing our continent. Our leaders always know they have the option to borrow. And debt is one of the ways that the West has managed to control Africa. So while I do not discredit, even my organization right now is funded by a white person, but how do we work to ensure that we are not just a dependent organization? We try to work to ensure that we are also a social enterprise. So if we have a donor who is giving us trees to grow in a school, we grow the fruit trees, and when the trees start fruiting, we take those seeds and we make our own tree nursery, so that we can sell the tree nurseries to other people who are running the project to keep our project sustainable. That's why right now the whole narrative is about getting our organizations to become social enterprises and not dependent organizations. We need to challenge the Eurocentric narratives by critically examining the dominant environmental discourses. You will find that there are so many biases. And us as Africans, we are very limited in our research and in our information. So we rely almost on the West for everything. And whoever has the pen writes the narrative. Whoever has the money calls the shot. So it's up to us to find a way that we can use this aid that is coming to step up in order for us to be able to reach the goals that we are trying to achieve, and also ensure that we have the autonomy to make our own decisions and progress as a nation and as a continent. In the case of religion, that is a very, very critical point, that indeed religion has worked in eroding the African culture. And I don't want to speak from a point of ignorance, but I would like to have another speaker help me answer this question, because I believe that with religion, it is all about what you choose to believe in. I don't know what religion has done when it comes to this important knowledge, such as having herbalists, because me, I still use I still use herbal medicine when need be. And I know there are some religions that are against that, or you find religions that say some of the cultural practices that we are doing right now are demonic, or there's witchcraft. And I know that is the role of the religion in discrediting some of our cultural practices. But honestly, I don't want to speak from a point of ignorance. I would like to defer that question to another speaker or another panelist who will have more wisdom on that topic. Yes.
Thank you, Nangila. Maybe we can have Mr. Linus.
Yeah, thanks once again. I would like to take the question that was in line with technology. And I want to say that technology is, we have to embrace technology. We can't say that it has come and we have to embrace it. So it depends on how are we going to package the technology, and how are we going to use this technology to make sure that even our indigenous knowledge are kept, and we have the indigenous knowledge within us, and our culture also preserve our culture. So I was saying that in my previous presentation, I said that we can use this technology. Maybe we package the information that we have and incorporate them in the AI, so that at least people also can get them in AI. I'm sure even right now, the AI is there, but it lacks a lot of facts. It lacks a lot of information. So it is us to source this information from different sources, from our backgrounds, from our elder people, to feed the AI. So that is how I would like to address it. And also, we have to do a lot of research, maybe as a scholar or maybe as a person who is interested in learning more about philosophy. Doing a lot of research is very, very crucial. Like doing a lot of research with persons who came before us, trying to check on technology, of which I'm sure a number of issues are not incorporated yet in AI and all this technology. And we have to embrace this technology because we can't hide from technology. And this is the way to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Linus. What I'm getting specifically is that is a clarion call to youth to learn, innovate, incorporate, and all. Mr. Themba, the floor is yours.
Thank you. About a month ago, I wrote an article, Challenges of Africa, Understanding Africa's Challenges. In the article, I mentioned that this is or might be one of the most promising times to be an African. In other words, this is the greatest time to be an African. To answer the question in part, the one of the use of technology, AI, to truly honor African traditions and philosophies, we need to Africanize AI. This means adapting AI to better reflect and integrate African cultural values and knowledge systems. By digitizing oral traditions, which primarily African philosophy, AI can record and preserve African stories and teachings, ensuring that they are accessible for future generations, creating digital archives with a focus on African knowledge to help us maintain the cultural heritage. AI tools should and can be used to support African languages, making sure that philosophical concepts are understood in their native context. Educational platforms can be incorporated in African philosophy into their content, helping students to connect with their cultural roots. I think AI can also be used to engage communities, combining traditional practices and modern technology to tackle environmental challenges. Lastly, in terms of the use of technology, this use of technology should be designed to visualize and respect traditional knowledge, showing how it can solve contemporary. I do acknowledge that at the moment, AI and technology is Eurocentric and it is not being developed by Africans. When I started to answer this question, I did mention that in my article, I wrote that this might be the greatest time to be an African. I do believe that right now we have the right information, the right technologies, even though it's developing, but we are at the forefront and we have our foot at the doorstep of learning about AI and technology and Africanizing technology and AI. In terms of the question of religion, yes, this is a very interesting question. How I will answer it is that African philosophy is not inherently a religion or related to a religion, but it often intersects with religious beliefs and practices. So, to understand this is that African philosophy is not the same as religion, though it often overlaps with spiritual and religious beliefs. It focuses primarily on fundamental questions about existence, values, and ethics, while religion typically involves organized systems of worship and spiritual practices. Many philosophical ideas influenced by traditional beliefs, but contemporary African philosophy often does address universal questions independently of religious context. Thank you very much. I hope that answered the questions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Themba, for your insight.
I think our host is having connection problems with the internet. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Again, our host for the technical hitches. So last we mentioned we had invited Mr. Osama Mostradan to give us a word. Well, he seems to be quiet on his end. So as we are waiting for him, any more questions from, well, the crowd? So while we are trying to get our attendees, maybe more questions from the crowd, the one question I particularly had was when we're talking about Africanization and Africanizing technology as well, it evolves. However, maybe a question to the panelist and maybe to Mr. Themba is, how is this a long-term plan, or can we actually bank on this being a long-term initiative? Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can you kindly please repeat the question?
Oh, yes, I was asking whether the clarion call to Africanize evolving technologies is actually a long-term foreseeable plan. Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Africanizing technology in the long term will be very beneficial. Integrating AI can play a very key role in preserving and promoting African philosophy and also environmental change. I have mentioned a few already, things like storytelling and simulation, visualizing how traditional knowledge can address current environmental challenges, and also predicting what the future has in terms of environmental challenges. Community engagement, AI can be used to analyze data to combine traditional practices with modern solutions. And also in terms of educational tools, in the context of African philosophy, of course, and environmental conservation, all this information can be put into digital learning platforms and supporting local language, developing AI for African languages. There are many things or concepts that we are not aware of that can be very helpful when it comes to the environment, even the practices that we have been using pre-colonial times. And also it can be used to preserve our culture and traditional knowledge, and also digitizing oral traditions. We should note that African philosophy is primarily oral, and it is only recently being written by us. So digitizing oral traditions or oral philosophy from time immemorial, recording and transcribing oral stories and teachings, AI can help preserve and share this African philosophy to help us modernize and understand our environment in the context of Africanicity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Themba. Osama, the floor is yours.
Oh, can I add something on that?
Yes, you can.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Thank you.
I also wanted to say.
I hope that everybody can hear me now.
Yes, we.
I'm forced to speak out my mother tongue, the concept it, i.e. as I say hello to all of you, Kabarak University. Addressing this morning is both an honor and a privilege for me. In preparing for this webinar, I look back to my engagement fight against climate change in Africa since 2015. So I'm African, as such, I'm a great believer in storytelling as one of the most effective ways to share both knowledge and experience between human beings. So that I would like to do this morning with your permission is to share with you a few personal stories and anecdotes, which I hope you may remember and that could help you as you navigate the coming years. In 2015, I was 15 years old when I started my activism on achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. I started cleaning the beach with my friends from my small village. A year later, I was started my non-profit organization with $20. That's my father gave me. At the beginning, it was complicated to finance our project. In 2015, I was selected by the Minister of Environment and Youth to represent Comorian youth at the Ocean Indian Youth Assembly, which was placed in under the topic Youth and Climate Change, which is held in Djibouti. On a back home, my country, the president invited to me to the State House to talk about commitment and ambition. And I gave him a document on proposed a law to fight environmental protection in Comoros Islands. And to my great surprise, 6 months later, the law was passed by the Comorian National Assembly. Now I'm coming to my second story, which is about continuous learning and renewal. I think that when I finished my high studies in Comoros in 2019, I traveled to attend prepared classes in Morocco, and I was full engaged with Enactus Morocco to help vulnerable population and encourage young people to be a citizen of the world. I took online certification at UNITAR on the impact of climate change and health in September 2022. I was designated by the UNESCO among the young leaders who work to promote the culture of peace, global citizenship, and sustainable development in Africa. In September 23, I was selected as a delegate to ICAR, African Youth Climate Assembly in Kenya, and the African Climate Summit in Kenya again. I was selected to participate to the COI 18 in Dubai. In September, I had a chance to go at Lena School in Kenya, and I had a privilege to interacting with students of this prestigious school, addressing crucial topics such as the environment and fight against climate change. I was encouraging experience because I was deeply impressed by the young people's understanding of global issues.
Hi, Mr. Osama.
It is an opportunity for me to share my experience and inspire them more. The point of this story is not brag about my achievements. I'm telling you that to say I hold never we should never give up on our dreams and ambition.
Thank you so much, Mr.
African,
Osama, for that. We are pressed for time. We would like to welcome Nabintu and Chico to give us our concluding remarks. My sincerest apologies for that.
okay, thanks.
Thank you so much, Osama, for reminding us about our dreams. And thank you for all panelists that are present today in this webinar. Kabarak Faith and Environment believes that the values of faith are primary drivers of people worldview, imparting positive or negative values judgments to behavior. Around the world, faiths underscore the importance of nature and human responsibility to respect and protect environments. As Temba and Nagila point out, philosophy in environmental solution conservation is an approach of shared responsibility. Also, the need to address the intergenerational equity gap is very important today. I think Nangila also pointed out the intergenerational equity as a gap when it comes to climate change, environmental degradation, specifically because it's linked directly to what African philosophy is. So intergenerational equity is an idea of what the present generation will leave to future generation in terms of wealth and natural resources. However, I think the term generation has posed a problem. What is a generation? So, generation means younger people in relation to older people, present people, and future people. This means that intergenerational equity should also consider what the older generation should leave to the younger generation. Children and youth alive today, not only the one who are unborn, who does not yet exist. Intergenerational equity is also understood as the transfer of past liability to the present generation, who are required to pay for the compensation of harms caused by past generations. Climate change affects millions of people today. The most vulnerable are those in global south like us, who are initially poor, lack jobs, lack education, and struggle daily to survive. Most importantly, Africa. 9% of the population are young people, meaning they are the most affected. We are the most affected. Consequently, climate finance is needed to secure our lives, education, and jobs. With effective climate finance, us, African youth, could help develop our countries and start about caring about others' generation, in my view, because we cannot carry now or care about other generation if we're still sleeping hungry, struggle to go to school because of flood or sea level, as people said. In my view, it's difficult, again, if I could repeat myself, to think of future generation if you are going to bed hungry every day and homeless due to climate change. What concerns me is that climate finance risk also not to be a sustainable solution to stop climate change, as it can lead to increased production and the commodification of nature. This poses a risk to intergenerational equity. There is also the need for the polluting country to reduce their gas emissions. African philosophy, as commonly known Ubuntu. Ubuntu is the idea of I am because you are, and I am human when I'm in my community. We are human in our community, and this is an altruistic approach toward nature also. We are a product of nature, and thus we must protect the community, not only emotionally, but also materially. What are we doing to stop climate change? What are we doing as youth to address environmental degradation at all levels today? Local, regional, global level. I think that was today's question, to remind us that generation is not waiting for those who will come 50 years after this. Generation is us also. We have to ask our parents, what decision are you taking today? That decision affects me, that decision will affect my future children, my grandchildren. And this is something we can only do all together, all youth together. So that was, I could say, my concluding remarks. Thank you so much for taking your time and taking place in this webinar. I have also said thank you to UNEP. Special thank you to Asmaira Alibari, who supported us during pre-webinar, during webinar, and after webinar. And thank you so much for all panelists and all attendees today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Letitia, for the concluding remarks. Yes, again, much thanks to everybody who was present today, to everyone who added to the conversation. Thank you so much. It's a lot of repetition from our side, but we'd like to thank our panelists, members who were present, members participating, and to our webinar conveners. Yes, thank you so much to the technical team and everyone. And maybe a final remark is the Earth is 4.6 billion years old. And if we scale it to 46 years old, well, humanity has only been here for just 4 hours. Then our industrial revolution began only 1 minute ago. And in that brief time, we have destroyed 30% of the world's forests, and that's not sustainable. Maybe that is something to think about. And that's a question for thought. I'm seeing a question for thought from David. He's asking, hi, I have a question for Esther Blessing. Can African political philosophies, especially those emerging from post-colonial critics, offer viable solutions to contemporary political and social challenges in Africa, especially Kenya? Well, we've already had our concluding remarks, but I will be sure to answer that question. Yes, thank you. Oh, well, thank you and goodbye. Have a lovely day.
You too.